Hey guys, this is Matt. Welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we're gonna go ahead and start getting some of this trim installed. In the last video, I went through pretty much every piece of trim I had in the car and either, repaired it, painted it, refinished it, whatever I needed to do to get it looking good again. So all that is pretty much what we need to focus on now and get it put back into the car. Before I can do that though, I do have a few things I need to go ahead and address kind of inside the rear hatch area. There's some wiring I need to take care of and a few loose odds and ends that really we should go ahead and take care of now before everything's put back in the car. And because the rear speakers that I took out of the car are completely wrecked, it's probably time to go ahead and address those as well. I did go ahead and pick up a new pair. I'll cover all that and do the installation of the rear speakers while we're at it. So that's enough talking for right now. Let's go ahead and head out to the garage and get to work. A couple of hours later, I have the entire back area scrubbed. I scrubbed down in the channels next to the hatch and cleaned up as much of the debris and crap out of here that I could. So that's nice and clean, cleaned down with degreaser, and I'm happy with it. A couple things that you're probably gonna wanna pay attention to if you're doing this in your car, before you go in and put all the trim in, it's worth going around, checking the wires, see if there's any issues with that. Also try to identify anything that could rattle, make a vibration. On my RX7, I found that the cable that connects to the latch is quite loose in places and could ease, I don't know if you can hear that on the camera, but that could definitely make a rattle. There's a few loose wires here and there, so I'm going to use Tessa tape and other tapes that I've got, and maybe even some foam, wrap around some of those and tuck them out of the way, so that I think this was for the antenna in the car, so I'll just tie that back out of the way. But also I've gone through and make sure all the connectors for everything else are nice and clean and tight. And yeah, that's about it for the RX7. I also went ahead and cleaned the upper section of the hatch just to get all that ready, so that when I go to clean this and add this trim later, it's not falling down on the stuff I just put in. And I didn't really worry about it too much right now because mine are actually in okay shape, but the bump stops for the hatch, or what they rest on when it's closed, I'd probably go ahead and get replacements for that. They are a little bit dry rotted, and mine's got a lot of overspray that I couldn't clean off of them, but they're still fine, so I'll use them for now. And then of course this back hatch seal, the weather stripping, I probably would have went ahead and picked up a new one of those, but considering this car might get painted and then in the future, I'll just deal with that and get a new one after that process. I just have it pulled back out of the way so we can get these trims in. I will go ahead and identify all the loose wires that I need to wrap with some Tessa tape and get that taken care of. And then really, I will probably go ahead and put the spare tire back in this car, just because, and it's probably pointless, but at least for me, if I did ever get into an issue and there wasn't anybody nearby that could come help me, then I could at least maybe get off the road or get to some place where somebody could help me. So I will go ahead and clean up the spare tire and put it back in here. Actually check and make sure that it holds air first, but I'll get that put back in. And then I can go ahead and start laying in all the various trim pieces. I have basically a new carpet for a left-hand drive that I can put in here, but I'll wait and do that probably towards the end so it doesn't get too dirty. Once all this trim is in, then we can keep moving forward. I'll go ahead and put this hatch trim in at some point in time. I do have some connectors and things I need to get pulled out from where the trim was in this car, but for now I'll get focused on getting in all of this this rear trim. I thought this would be a good time to go ahead and check in. So I have the right side rear panel fully installed, no issues there, and I've done all my cable management that I wanted to do and check through everything. And I did go ahead and bundle up all my speaker wires and audio wires. I don't think I'm going to use the OEM tool tray, so I'm not going to put all that back, so that'll be plenty of room to hide that in behind the side panel. And then in the future I can fish those out when I go to do the audio system. But I did go ahead and add the wires for the rear speakers, so there's extra wire there, and I just bundled one up there. I left it long enough that I could drag it over here to this side if we ever put the amplifier and stuff on this side. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that I did get all the wires bundled up and kind of secured in behind each of these side panels. This is the cable that runs to the back latch for the hatch, and I put some foam under there to help protect it from vibrating, so that's good. So next thing I need to do is go grab this other side panel and go ahead and get it installed. have all the rear trims back in, fully secured, all the clips and fasteners installed. So I did go ahead and paint my strut bar, so the covers and the strut bar will go in once the paint's dry, but that all is basically done as well. So yeah, that completes all of this, and this was always probably the biggest eyesore to the car just because of how discolored and damaged some of this trim was. And like I said, I've replaced some of the trim with newer pieces that were in better condition than what I already had. And once I'm nearly complete, I'll go back through the entire car and wipe everything back down again, because it's probably got fingerprints and dust on it just from getting it installed. But I'm really happy with the way all this turned out. I'll try to insert a video clip of how it used to look if I could find a decent one, but all this had overspray on it. And anyway, so all this is secure. I've actually got all the bolts and things fastened, so it shouldn't rattle. The last thing I really need to do back here is this upper trim around the hatch. But before I do that, I need to probably go ahead and get started on the B-pillar trim, just so I can start figuring out what I need to do with that. I don't think there's really anything I need to do other than clean it, but I do need to get the rear speakers brackets installed with the new speakers installed and wired in. So let's go over to the workshop and check some of that stuff out. My B-pillar panels are in pretty decent shape. I picked these up off of one of my viewers out of Arizona, and there's no broken tabs, cracks, anything like that, just some few minor scratches. So I'll probably just take these and do back to black on them to get them looking good again. Otherwise, those can really just be popped back in the car. My speaker brackets are in decent shape. The existing speakers, not so much. So I definitely gonna get those replaced. And I've got some speakers. I'll show you more about that later, but I'll go ahead and get the new speakers wired up to be able to plug into the OEM connector. But I got to get both of those for both sides swapped out. And then really probably the only thing I need to do is do some painting on the speaker grills, because they're kind of chipped and missing some paint. I've had decent luck so far using the vinyl and fabric paint. And this is the center dash speaker cover, and I've used the same paint on it, and it turned out really well. So I'll do that on both of these. So I'll probably do that first so I can get the paint drying. Otherwise, I need to go ahead and get these old speakers out of the speaker brackets and get the new ones in. And then I've got a few things in the car I probably need to button up with that are related to the audio system. So I'll show you that here in a second, but otherwise I'm gonna get these cleaned up and get them painted. I've unboxed my speakers, and I've got a set of 6x8 Kicker KSCs. They have a pretty decent power range, and they're probably a little bit of an upgrade from typical speakers, certainly an upgrade from factory speakers. But I've always liked Kicker speakers, so I'm gonna run Kicker in this car. And basically this car can accept 6x8 or 5x7, which is kind of true of all of those speaker sizes. But mine were completely destroyed. The surround is gone and is making a huge mess. But I did go ahead and pry this one out, because these speakers are screwed into these brackets, but there also is some adhesive that for whatever reason they decide to glue the speakers in. So you basically just have to take your time and be careful, and I just use a small flathead screwdriver and a hammer to get it kind of going. You can kind of see some of the scratches I've got there, but basically work your way around the edges and eventually it pops out. So I kind of was surprised by that. But just a little tip for you, if you're doing this in your car, these OEM speakers are glued in and they're pretty well destroyed anyway, so it doesn't matter. The speaker connection is actually mounted to the speaker on the factory speakers. So I tried to see if I could just pull this off, and it looks like it's kind of been plastic welded on there. So I'm just gonna leave those alone, and I'll take the new connector wires that came with the speakers and just splice these into the factory harness, which that's fine for me. I like keeping the connectors when I can, but in this case it's just be easier to splice these in. So I do need to figure out the positive and negative orientation, as it's really not it's not defined on the factory speaker, but I know I've seen it online, so it's not a big deal. It is defined here. There's a plus and minus, and the wire, the spades are, the plus will be the bigger one and the minus will be the smaller one. So wiring these back in will be fairly straightforward. Just figuring out the positive and negative wires from the factory harness is the only step that's going to be a little extra work. Hopefully you can see it there on the screen, but basically the bracket has right hand and an arrow up So when I go to mount these speakers in, I'll have the orientation already determined. I don't have to figure anything out. Part of my installation, I'm going to use speaker gasketing tape around some of this. So I need to get some of this adhesive cleaned off, and then I may go ahead and use some speaker gasketing around that just to prevent any possible rattles. And then I've also got these fast rings, which it's just a set of foam rings that'll kind of build up inside the car to help give this some but otherwise all the air volume is just kind of inside the panel and goes back into the car. And so this just kind of gives it a little bit more control over the air volume for the speaker. So that's that. The only other thing that I need to do is in the car where the JDM seat belts for the rear seats bolt into the side of the body. There's kind of a big opening that just opens into the chassis. I'm gonna go ahead and open some of my sound deadening material and kind of cover that, because it's a pretty decent hole that goes right behind where these speakers are at. So that way we can help control the air volume behind the speakers. But I'll show you that in a second when we go back out in the car. But for now, I need to go ahead and get this speaker taken apart and then get these cleaned up and then get the new speakers mounted. So I got the new speakers into the existing brackets and they fit just fine. There are some extra little tabs, I guess, depending on how these would mount in the car. And I just kind of bent mine up and out of the way, but you could just cut them off, but I think they'll be fine leaving them in. So they're installed. I got the speaker gasket in, and that's good because it's going to seal up any gaps around the speaker. And so the next thing I need to do is go out to the car and get the factory connector cut off and put these new wires on. Now, after I did my research online, I did determine on what would be, I guess, the left-hand side, the blue-yellow speaker will connect to the ground, and then on the right-hand side, the blue and yellow, again, I think that's the inverse, but the blue and yellow wires are going to be the ones I want to connect into the ground. So here are the speaker grills all painted. I'll probably still let them dry overnight before I put them in the car. They've been drying for like an hour, so they're at least I can handle them. After I get the wires installed, I'll show you on the car some of the last little bit of things that we need to do before we install the speakers and get the side panels on. So hopefully be able to see all this because it's a little bit of a tight space, but this is the factory wiring. And if yours is old like mine, the white and the yellow look very similar in color, so I did have to look really close. But basically the blue wire with a yellow stripe will go to the negative connector, and then the other one's for positive. So I just spliced those in and taped them up. There is the new wire that I've run for future use, just kind of got it secured back for now. And then this up here is the big opening I was telling you about, where the cup that kind of holds the seat belt for the rear seats, kind of sits here. So I could put that cup back in, but I figure maybe one day I'll sell that, and I'll probably need to sell that as a set. So what I'm going to do is get into a new pack of sound deadening and cut me a little piece that'll fit over that, and then that'll be the same thing for the other side as well. It's difficult to film, so I'll just check in when I've got that in, but basically I'll make a little paper template that's roughly that dimension, trace that template out, and then stick it on there. Then I should be able to bring the speaker bracket out and get it mounted. I got the speakers installed and wired in, and I went ahead and put the foam surround just on the back side. It's in a little bit of a conflict with the seat belt, but I think it'll be okay. I got my wires all wired in and connected, everything fastened down, and then up there is the little bit of the sound skins that I put over that opening. So there it is, fully installed. And then I've got a foam surround that goes around the outside, which I'll put that in once I get the side panel on. All that's left now really is just to connect the B-pillar panels. I'll just pop those in, and it won't take me but 2 seconds probably, because it just pops back in. This thing is starting to come together pretty quick now that we've got kind of the major things done. So I think the next thing that'll have to happen is I need to start addressing this center console and getting some more of the dash cluster and steering wheel put on. But I think the next thing I'll need to work on is getting in the shifter and the center console. All right, progress has definitely been made today. So I went ahead and left the speaker grill off so I could show you how I kind of cut this foam surround to kind of, I had it cut like about 1 inch of width off of it, but I did cut it just to barely fit. And then the speaker cover can just be snapped back on. And then I couldn't help myself, so I went ahead and installed the other side and the back panel. So everything here fit just perfect. I had, really no modifications, so it's very easy to do the JDM conversion over to the rear bins. I mean, literally, other than tracking down the parts, there wasn't really much else that needed to be done. So the back is extra shiny because I took more time cleaning that. So the rest of these panels will get the same treatment now that they're all in the car. That's that. Really just tedious getting everything cleaned. Luckily, I didn't have any broken clips. Now, pro tip, before you go put these panels, any of the side panels on, make sure you got all the old clips out. I did have one that I didn't realize was still stuck in the car, so when I go put this panel on, it wouldn't go in there, so I had to take it back off and pop that clip off. So just take a look-see before you go put the panel on. Make sure you don't have any of those clips left, and definitely make sure you track down all the little panel clips, just because that's really what helps secure everything down. So anyway, everything is secure. I don't really have any squeaks or wobbles, and that is going to be it for me today. So yeah, definitely the next thing I need to do is get to the center console and the shifter. But for me, that's all I'm going to get to today. So thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.